So today we'll start this long run equilibrium of farm and industry. In the previous class, yesterday, we have done short run equilibrium of farm and industry. So in long run, farms will also maximize their profit as they do in case of short run equilibrium. So you can see from this left hand side diagram, this is the demand curve, this is the market demand curve, this is for industry, and the right hand side for one particular farm. So on the left hand side, we have the market demand curve, DD, and the market supply curve, SS. So the equilibrium is taking place at this point E0, where in the market price is P0, this market price, which is constant, and all the farms take this price as given, and they try to maximize their profit at this given price, and they will see how much amount of production one particular farm can do given this price. So this price is constant P0. Now farms,
Sir, your voice is not clear, sir.
So farms take this price as given P0. Now it's clear. Voice is clear now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So farms take this price P0 as given. So for the farms, the demand curve of the farm will be this horizontal straight line. And so this marginal revenue curve of the farm is this line, horizontal line PP, P0P. Now we draw the marginal curve. This is long run marginal curve, LMC, like this. So the equilibrium for a farm will be at point E0 on the right hand side diagram. So farm will produce, to maximize its profit, they will produce Q0 amount of output at price P0. So this P0 price. Farm is not determining this P0 price. It is determined from the industry. So farm take this P0 price as constant. Now, in case of long run equilibrium, this LAC curve will be like this, where this marginal revenue curve will be tangent to the LAC curve at the equilibrium. Okay. So in case of a long run equilibrium, what are the conditions? So at the equilibrium price, the market demand is equal to market supply. This is for the market or the industry. And for the farm, your marginal revenue will be equal to LMC. So here at this point, LMC is equal to MR, because this LMC curve is intersecting this MR curve at point E0. So at the equilibrium point E0, LMC is equal to MR. Also, the MR is equal to the price here. So MR price is equal to LMC, long run marginal cost. Now, as LAC curve is tangent to the marginal revenue curve at point E0, that means all the farms will earn only normal profit, as price is equal to LAC. Clear? So at the long run equilibrium, price is equal to LAC equal to LMC. So long run equilibrium will be achieved at the minimum point of LAC, so that the average cost of production is minimum. So at equilibrium E0, farm is producing Q0 at price P0, and industry output is QM at price P0. So this is QM. So all the farms are earning normal profit in long run equilibrium, So no firm will enter or exit from the industry in this long run equilibrium. Clear? Now what will happen if some firms earning supernormal profit or some firms are making some loss? So as I said that this LSE curve will be tangent to this MR curve. So at this point, per unit revenue, as this curve is this horizontal straight line, is the average revenue curve is also. So per unit, this is the revenue per unit, this vertical distance. Okay, E0 Q0, E0 Q0. This is the average revenue or per unit revenue. So the total revenue will be, total revenueটা কত হবে?
স্যার দাম এবং পরিমাপ দুটো মিলিয়ে মানে হচ্ছে স্যার Q0 E0 and P দামটাকে পুরো নিয়ে আর কি ওই টোটাল
Q0 times
আয়তক্ষেত্রটা।
P0. So
হ্যাঁ
this rectangle will be your total revenue.
yes sir.
Okay. So what about the total cost? What is average cost? Because this is the LSE curve, long run average cost. So at the equilibrium point, so to produce Q0, per unit cost or average cost is this distance, the same E0 Q0. So average cost is also E0 Q0. So total cost will be equal to this Q0 times P0, the area of this rectangle. Okay. So profit here will be equal to 0. So each firm is earning only normal profit. So if each firm is earning a normal profit here, that means no firm has any incentive to enter into this industry, or no firm have any incentive to exit from the industry. So এখানে এই ইকুইলিব্রিয়াম পজিশনে যতগুলো ফার্ম আছে তারা সবাই প্রোডাকশন করতে থাকবে এই ইকুইলিব্রিয়ামে, কেউ বেরোবে না বা নতুন কোনো ফার্ম এন্টার করবে না। নাও এখন যদি এলএসি কার্ভটা এরকম, if this LSE curve is not tangent to MR curve, if this LSE curve is something like this, if this is the LSE curve, then what will happen? Equilibrium is still at this point E0, because equilibrium requires MR equal to MC, which is happened at this point. That means point of intersection between LMC and this MR curve. So at this equilibrium, per unit cost will be this distance Q0, they call it F. So this vertical distance Q0F is the per unit cost. And what is the average revenue? Is this distance E0 Q0. Okay. That means the firm is making a loss per unit, which is of amount E0F. Okay. বোঝা গেল? হ্যালো,
ইয়েস স্যার বোঝা গেছে।
একটু বলতে থাকো, তার না হলে আমি বুঝতে পারছি না তোমরা বুঝেছো কিনা। So if these firms are making loss, that means in long run some firm will leave or exit from the industry. Now যখন কিছু ফার্ম ইন্ডাস্ট্রি থেকে বেরিয়ে যাবে, that means the market supply will fall. That means this supply curve will shift to the left like this, S1 S1, it will shift to the left. সুতরাং new equilibrium will take place at some point here, which is say E1. Now market price টা তখন P0 থেকে বেড়ে P1 হয়ে গেল। সুতরাং নতুন মার্কেট প্রাইসটা হয়ে যাবে somewhere here, so that at the equilibrium the MR curve becomes tangent to this LSE curve. so that we come to a new long run equilibrium. বোঝা গেল?
sir.
Now what will happen if ছবিটা একটু অপরিষ্কার হয়ে আছে, যদি এলএসি কার্ভটা এরকম হতো। Now look at the when we are
LSE বললেন তো স্যার?
হ্যাঁ, when we are drawing this LSE curve, you always remember this average cost curve or the LMC curve must intersect the average cost curves at the minimum point of LSE curve. Okay. So if the cost LSE curve is somewhere like this, then what will happen? Where is your equilibrium is still at point E0, where we have MR equal to MC. Now, at this equilibrium, firm is producing Q0 amount of output. So per unit revenue, firm is getting E0 Q0 this much, and firm's cost is per unit cost we get from LSE curve. So this point, they call it G. So GQ0, this vertical distance, GQ0 is per unit cost. That means firms will earn this E0G amount of
supernormal profit, sir.
This amount of profit per unit. So each firm will earn some amount of supernormal profit. So it
Yes,
will
sir.
be basically the area of this rectangle. This rectangle. So this will be the supernormal profit. Now, the other firms which are still not into this industry, not a part of this industry, other firms are seeing that all the firms in this industry are making supernormal profit. So these other firms will try to enter into this industry. Now, when these new firms entering into this industry, what will happen to the market supply? Market supply will go up, so the supply curve will shift to the right like this, and as a result of that, the new equilibrium will be somewhere here. That means the market price will fall to say P2, so that the new MR curve will be like this, where this MR curve is tangent to the LSE curve. বোঝা গেল?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, বুঝতে পেরেছি।
Okay. So এটাই বলা এখানে। So if some firms earn supernormal profit, then other firms will be attracted and enter into the industry. Then market supply curve will shift rightward, reducing equilibrium price. This process will continue till price becomes equals to LMC equals to LSE, and all firms earn supernormal profit only. And if some firms makes loss, it will leave from the industry. Then market supply will shift leftward and raising the equilibrium price, and this process will continue till price equal to LMC equal to LSE, and all firms earn normal profit only. Clear? Now come to long run supply curve. Okay. So in case of short run supply curve, we have seen the short run supply curve is this part of marginal cost curve, which is over and above the minimum of ABC curve. If we go back, so this part of the SMC curve, the short run marginal cost curve, is the part of this SMC curve which is above the point A. Point A is the minimum of short run average variable cost curve. So short run marginal cost curve is the marginal cost curve above the minimum point of average variable cost curve. Now in case of long run, so in long run, what is happening? In long run, there is all cost are variable cost. There is no fixed cost is there. So there is no AVC curve is there. So everything is variable. So basically, SSE curve is the long run average cost curve, not SSE. It will be LSE curve. L means long run average cost curve. So long run marginal long run supply curve will be the part of the LMC curve which lies over and above the minimum point of LSE curve. So if you draw a curve like this, say this is LSE curve, and say this is LMC curve. So this point E is the minimum point of LSE curve. So I'm saying that this part of LMC curve which lies above the minimum point of LSE, this is the long run supply curve of a particular farm. So this is not the market supply curve. So again, we can draw the market supply curve as the horizontal summation of individual supply curves. Okay. So in long run, all costs are variable. So farm will stay in the industry if it earns normal profit in the long run. So therefore, long run supply curve of the farm is this part of MC curve for which price is greater than minimum of LSE. So this part is over and above the minimum point of LSE. So this part will be the long run supply curve of a particular farm. Okay. Now come to the producer surplus. Okay. So in chapter 1, we have seen consumer surplus. Now here the producer surplus is the difference between market price and the minimum price that the producer is willing to accept. Say,
স্যার স্যার শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
বলো।
স্যার আমরা যখন স্যার সরি স্যার মানে প্রডিউসার সারপ্লাস না, কনজিউমার সারপ্লাসটা আমরা যখন পড়েছিলাম তখন স্যার একটা উদাহরণ ছিল যে কোনো একটা দ্রব্য যখন কোনো কনজিউমার কিনতে যাচ্ছে তখন সেই দ্রব্যটার একটা দাম সে ধরেছে এবং বাজারে দেখা যাচ্ছে গিয়ে আর একটা দাম আছে, সেহেতু যে দামটা তার বাজারে রয়েছে সেই দামটার সাথে যেটা ধরেছে সেটার পার্থক্য হচ্ছে গিয়ে কনজিউমার সারপ্লাস। এবার প্রডিউসার সারপ্লাসের ক্ষেত্রে যখন কোনো একজন প্রডিউসার মার্কেটে কাঁচামাল বা কিছু কিনতে যাচ্ছে তখন সে যে দামটা ধরেছে সেই দামে সে যে এবং বাজারে যে দাম আছে সেটার পার্থক্যটাই কি এখানে প্রডিউসার সারপ্লাস হিসেবে ধরা হচ্ছে স্যার?
হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু মানে একটু জাস্ট ডিফাইন করতে হবে ঠিকঠাক করে। কনজিউমার সারপ্লাস বেসিক্যালি this is the demand curve. So from the demand curve, we can say this if the consumer wants to purchase this unit, this one unit, then how much the consumer is willing to pay.
ভয়েসটা ব্রেক করে যাচ্ছে স্যার।
Say if the consumer wants to purchase this one unit, so from the demand,
থেকে বলবেন, ভয়েসটা ব্রেক করে গেছে পুরো।
হ্যাঁ আমি ফার্স্ট থেকেই বলছি। So if the consumer wants to purchase this amount, then if we take the vertical distance, so this much amount is the consumer's willingness to pay. So consumer is willing to pay this price for this first one unit. Okay, but this is not the market price. This price, say this P0 price, is not the market price. Market price is the equilibrium price, or from the intersection of the demand curve and the supply curve. Say this P bar is the market price. So consumer is willing to pay this price, but he is actually paying this price only, this much. Similarly, for unit 2, the second unit, consumer is willing to pay this much, the vertical distance from the demand curve, but he is actually paying this much. So this difference is, this part is called consumer surplus. Okay. So if you add these distances, these vertical distances, we call this consumer surplus.
Yes, sir.
Now, in case of producers, for 1 unit, to produce 1 unit of output, producers will be happy to sell this 1 unit of output if they get this much price. So this is the producer's minimum willingness to accept. So if the producer gets this price at minimum, they will be happy to sell the price, sell the commodity. But at what price producer is actually selling? They are not selling at this price, P2. They are selling at the market price. So this is the price the producer is actually getting, this vertical distance. So this distance is basically the part of producer surplus. Similarly, this distance is part of the producer surplus. So this area above the supply curve and below the price line or below the market price. So this area is called producer's surplus. Clear?
Clear, sir.
বাকিদের কি খবর? ঘুমিয়ে পড়েছো? Okay, now look at this diagram. So producer surplus is basically this rectangle OQ0, E0, P0, this rectangle minus the area under the supply curve, which is OQ0, E0, A, this area. Fine. So this will be equal to triangle A, E0, P0, this triangle. Clear? Can you see the diagram?
হ্যাঁ স্যার, দেখতে পাচ্ছি।
Okay, so this area, the area of this rectangle is nothing but your total revenue. Okay, and this area is nothing but sum of all marginal costs. Now, as marginal cost means change in cost if you change output by 1 unit. Now, as fixed cost does not change if you change your output, so sum of all marginal cost is equal to sum of all variable costs, because only variable costs vary. So you can write this like this, sum of all variable costs. So this will be equal to TR minus total variable cost, TVC. Now we can write it like this. So producer surplus is equal to total revenue minus TVC, total variable cost. Now we know that the profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. So which will be equal to total revenue minus total fixed cost minus total variable cost. So from this we can write it like this. Total revenue will be equal to profit plus total fixed cost plus total variable cost. ঠিক আছে? Now just put this in this equation. So it will be equal to profit plus TFC plus TVC minus TVC. So this will be equal to profit plus total fixed cost. So we can say that the profit producer surplus will be equal to profit of the firm plus total fixed cost. Clear?
Clear, sir.
Okay, now another important thing is stability analysis and Walrasian and Marshallian approach of stability analysis. So this is very important. Every year, one or two questions come from this part. So just try to understand it very well. So first of all, what is an equilibrium? Say we have a demand curve and we have a supply curve. So we are saying that this point is equilibrium where demand and supply curve intersect each other. So this is the equilibrium price and this is the equilibrium output. Okay. So this will be equilibrium point. Now what stability means? Stability means if a equilibrium, one equilibrium, this point E0 will be a stable equilibrium if due to some reason, if we move from this equilibrium point, if due to market forces, if this equilibrium point, if we come back to this equilibrium point automatically, then we call it a stable equilibrium. And if we do not come back automatically to this point again, then we call it unstable equilibrium. বোঝা গেল?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
যদি আমরা কোনো কারণে একটা ইকুইলিব্রিয়াম পয়েন্ট থেকে if we divert from this equilibrium due to some reason, say we are at this point say B. Now I am saying that market will force the equilibrium to bring back to the equilibrium point E0, E1. In that case, we call it a stable equilibrium. And if it does not come back to E0, E1 point, then we call it an unstable equilibrium. বোঝা গেল?
হ্যাঁ স্যার। স্যার আপনি বলছিলেন না স্যার ডিউ টু সাম রিজন, স্যার রিজন গুলো কি হতে পারে, মানে কি হতে পারে?
আমি আসছি একটু পরে। বেসিক জিনিসটা আগে পরিষ্কার হয়েছে, কাকে স্টেবল বলে কাকে আনস্টেবল বলে?
হ্যাঁ, যখন স্যার কোনো একটা জিনিস যখন যে জায়গায় আছে সেই জায়গায় কিছু কারণের জন্য যখন সরে যাচ্ছে কিন্তু পরবর্তীকালে সেটা আর ওই জায়গায় ফিরে আসছে না, তখন আনস্টেবল, আর যখন ফিরে আসছে তখন সেটা স্টেবল।
Yes. Okay, now we have so equilibrium is a stable equilibrium if it is restored automatically in case we are away from the equilibrium. And equilibrium is unstable if it is not restored in case we are off the equilibrium. That means if we are moving away from the equilibrium, it will not come back to the equilibrium, then we call it an unstable equilibrium. Now to analyze this stability analysis, whether the equilibrium, this equilibrium is a stable equilibrium or not, we have two different approaches. One is called Walrasian approach and another is called Marshallian approach. Okay. So first we talk about the Walrasian stability analysis. So in case of Walrasian stability analysis, price will adjust to restore equilibrium. So how price adjusts? The mechanism is that if price will rise if there is an excess demand. That means if there is excess demand, price will go up, and if there is excess supply, price will fall. Okay. Now this is something, example is something like that. Say this is a demand curve of samosa in your college canteen, and this is a supply curve of samosa in your college canteen today. So this is your equilibrium price, say P0, and this will be the equilibrium quantity Q0. So this will be our equilibrium. Now, according to Walrasian approach, if price goes up, the price is somewhere here, then what is happening? There is excess supply. That means at P1 price, demand is this much, this distance, and supply is this distance up to this. Okay. That means there will be an excess supply of this amount. This is the amount of excess supply at P1 price. Then what will happen? Market price will start to fall. So example, you can think of the situation like this. Say today in your college canteen, the samosa wala the canteen wala produces say 1,000 samosa. But today in our college, say only 50 students arrived, or say 500 students arrived. That means if each one of the students have one samosa only, then after 500 samosas will be left over. That means there will be an excess supply of samosa. Then the vendor or canteen wala can say that, okay, I am reducing the price of samosa. Now you come and eat. So if he reduced price to say P2 here, then the amount of excess supply will be less than the previous amount. So again, price will fall up to P0, and at P0 there is no excess supply of samosas. Fine. So price will fall if there is excess supply. And now take any price, say P3 here. So at this price, the amount of demand is this much, but amount of supply is this much only. So there is an excess demand of this amount. So the situation is something like this. So today college canteen wala produces say 50 samosas, but today in our college 500 students came up. So that means there is an excess demand for samosas, and so the canteen wala can say, okay, those who bid highest amount of money for a samosa will get the first samosa, and those who will bid the second highest will get the second samosa, like this. So in a way, the price of samosa will start to rise. So as price of samosa rises, the amount of excess demand is decreases. Okay. So as we are moving closer to point E0, so ultimately, eventually the price will come back to P0 price, and the equilibrium will be restored to the initial equilibrium point E0. So price will go up if there is excess demand. Clear?
Clear, sir.
Now again, look, as price increases, the amount of excess demand will decrease. Okay, so there is an inverse relationship between price and excess demand. Okay, so we can call this equilibrium point a Walrasian stable equilibrium. Walrasian stable equilibrium. Fine.
বুঝতে পেরেছি স্যার।
So this figure equilibrium occurs at the intersection of demand and supply curve at point E0, where equilibrium price is P0 and output is Q0. This is the equilibrium price and this is the equilibrium quantity. So if due to some reason price is higher than P0, so at P1 there is excess supply, so price will come back to P0. And say if your price is lower than P0, say at P2 price, if at price is here at P2, then there is an excess demand of this amount. So price will start to rise and the equilibrium will come back. Equilibrium will be restored at point E0 and the equilibrium price will come back to P0. So we can call this equilibrium E0 a stable in Walrasian chains. Okay. So here price and excess demand are inversely related. Now we talk about Marshallian stability analysis. So in case of Marshallian stability analysis, output is adjusted to restore equilibrium. Okay. Now in case of Walrasian analysis, price is adjusting. Now in case of Marshallian analysis, output will adjust to restore equilibrium. And how output adjusts? Output will increase if demand price, what buyers are willing to pay, is higher than the supply price or what the sellers are willing to accept. Okay.
Sir, আরেকবার বলবেন স্যার?
Yes, I'm coming. Output will increase if demand price. Output will increase if demand price, what buyers are willing to pay, is higher than the supply price, what the sellers are willing to accept. And output will decrease if demand price is less than the supply price. Now, what is demand price? Demand price is what we get from the demand curve. Say, from the demand curve DD, say if the output is say Q1, for the Q1 output, what the demanders are willing to pay, the vertical distance from the demand curve, this distance. So this is the demand price. And what is the supply price from the supply curve? So the vertical distance from the supply curve, this distance is called the supply price. So we can see that the demand price is higher than the supply price here at the output Q1. So output will increase. Say, if we draw a curve like this, this is the demand curve and this is the supply curve. So the equilibrium is E0, where farm or output is Q0 amount of output produced in the market at the price P0. Now what I'm saying that if we are diverting from this equilibrium point E0, that means if the market is producing say some output level at say Q1 amount of output level, then for Q1 level of output, what demanders are willing to pay is this vertical distance from the demand curve. Just take this distance. So this is the demand price. This red line, the distance, is the demand price. Clear?
Yes,
and
sir.
what is the supply price? Supply price is this distance. Okay. So we can say that for output Q1, demand price dP is greater than the supply price. Okay. So as a result of that, as producers are seeing that the buyers are willing to pay more price than what they are willing to accept, then it is quite natural that they will start to produce more. So output, they will increase the production. So output will increase, market output. So output will increase and it moves toward Q0. So equilibrium E0 will be restored. Now, if we are at some point here, a higher output level than the equilibrium output level Q0, say if the market produces Q2 amount of output, then what will happen? Then the demand price is how much? This distance is the demand price and the supply price is
this distance স্যার আপনি এই জায়গায় স্যার
this
yes sir
distance.
this distance
So for Q2 output, demand price is less than supply price. So output will fall. So output will start to decrease in this direction and it will come back to Q0 amount of output. So equilibrium E0 will be restored again. So we can call this E0 equilibrium is a Marshallian stable equilibrium. Marshallian stable equilibrium. Fine. Is this clear to everybody? No one is here.
স্যার শুনতে স্যার আরেকবার বলুন কি বললেন
যা বললাম এই তো বললাম আর বললাম এটা ক্লিয়ার হয়েছে তো বোঝা গেছে
হ্যাঁ স্যার বুঝতে পেরেছি একদম
Okay, now some special cases. So I'm drawing this. So if the demand curve and the supply curve are both upward rising like this and the demand curve is steeper than the supply curve, then what will happen? Say what I'm saying that say this is demand curve VD and this is the supply curve. Yes. Now, if this is the equilibrium E0, now tell me whether this equilibrium is a stable equilibrium or an unstable equilibrium. Bolo. First start with Walrasian approach and then look at the Marshallian approach and check whether it is a stable equilibrium or not. Yes, tell me.
স্যার যেটা ওয়ালনাটস ইকুইলিব্রিয়াম যেটা স্যার প্রথমে ছিল ওটা স্যার মিলছে না তার কারণ হচ্ছে কি যখন স্যার দাম বাড়ছে ডিমান্ডটাও স্যার বেড়েই যাচ্ছে সাপ্লাই তো তুলনামূলক কম আছে দাম যখন বাড়ছে কিন্তু উল্টো হওয়ার কথা অ্যাকচুয়ালি
কেন এখানে ধরো P1 price start with this price P1 price so at P1 price so there is excess supply of this amount. So if there is excess supply, price will fall. And if you have some higher price, P2, lower price, so there is excess demand of this amount. So price will go up. So E0 will be a Walrasian stable equilibrium. Now what about Marshallian?
মার্শালিয়ান বলছে স্যার যে কোন এটা যদি মানে ওয়ালনাটস বলছে যে যে দামের উপর নির্ভর করছে দাম সবটাকে কন্ট্রোল করছে কিন্তু মার্শাল বলছে যে ওটা আউটপুটটা সমস্ত কিছুকে কন্ট্রোল করছে
কন্ট্রোল করছে না, আউটপুটটা অ্যাডজাস্ট করছে
দাম
যদি
এবং
যদি
ইয়ের সাথে
আউটপুটটা এখানে হয় Q1 আউটপুটে, তাহলে এখানে কি হচ্ছে, the demand price is higher than the supply price,
প্রাইস।
তাহলে কি হবে, আউটপুটটা আরো বেড়ে যাবে এদিকে। এদিকে যদি আউটপুট এখানে থাকে Q2 তে থাকে, তাহলে এখানে মিউট করো, ডিমান্ড প্রাইস ইজ লেস দ্যান দ্য সাপ্লাই প্রাইস, তাহলে আউটপুটটা আরো ফল করবে। তার মানে এটা মার্শালিয়ান আনস্টেবল ইকুইলিব্রিয়াম, আনস্টেবল। ওকে, একইভাবে তুমি বাড়িতে করে দেখবে, তোমরা ছবি এঁকে নাও, তারপর বাড়িতে করে দেখবে কোনটা আনস্টেবল কোনটা হচ্ছে। ডিমান্ড কার্ভ এন্ড সাপ্লাই কার্ভ দুটোই আপওয়ার্ড রাইজিং, and the supply curve is steeper than the demand curve. So figure 12. So in this case, it will be Walrasian unstable but Marshallian stable. And here both the demand curve and the supply curve are downward sloping, but supply curve is steeper than the demand curve. Then it will be Walrasian stable but Marshallian unstable. And in this case, demand curve and the supply curve are both downward sloping, and demand curve is steeper than the supply curve. So in this case, it will be Walrasian unstable but Marshallian stable. And for this diagram, if the supply curve is downward sloping and demand curve is upward sloping, then equilibrium will be unstable in both Walrasian and Marshallian states. Okay, I'll stop here.